Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Enneagram, and this is sort of inspired by some posts that I've seen on the main sub recently, and just exchanges I've had with people that essentially are trying to ask, what the point is of the Enneagram, and this kind of idea that nobody agrees and it doesn't have a point. And I think if somebody were to ask me, tell me about the Enneagram, what's it about? So let's say I meet somebody in my daily life and talk to them and say that I'm working on a book and tell them that it's the Enneagram and see if they know about that and try to figure out a way to explain it to them. And basically, it's not that easy of a thing to explain. It's this idea that, on one level, it's that there are 9 types of people. That's one way of looking at it, but this has pitfalls, because then we fall into stereotyping people, and that's not what it's about at all. It's something much deeper than that. It's really that there are 9 spiritual fixations or passions that we can look to map our own struggles, our own fixations. And it really has a basis in spirituality. It was born of spirituality. And a few different religions came together, and they're not the religions as they're understood in the mainstream. They are mysticism behind the religions, like Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, or Sufism, which is Islamic mysticism, and Christianity, Christian mysticism. So now we're looking at, mystery schools and, less well understood hidden systems, hidden schools, and it's hidden occulted knowledge. Okay, and the Enneagram is like that. It's about tapping into that, finding what your quote unquote type is, but that's a superficial way of looking at it. It's not really just what type of a person you are in a superficial sense. I think that people get into traps by doing that, and it's more about understanding these passions and understanding that language. There's it's good to have a shorthand way of understanding them. There are many different sets of terms that are used, but probably the most favored one that is traditionally referenced uses the 7 deadly sins from Christianity, which most don't know used to be the 8 evil thoughts, right? This was to go back to early Christianity, and there were 8 of them. And there was vainglory, okay, and that was collapsed and taken out. So the Enneagram has expanded to include that, and also includes fear, the 9th one. And fear is implicitly, set up as a sin in all religions because it's the absence of faith. Okay, so maybe that's why it was never explicitly spelled out in Christianity. But the Kabbalism has the Tree of Life and the 10 Sephirot, and Sufism has Nafs, which there are 7 to 9 of, depending on which version you study. And Christianity has its sins, and there are many. All the religions basically pick an organized main religion, and they all have something like this. Okay, so the Enneagram is the most simple, all-encompassing religion that there is, which is this simple idea that we have a dominant sin or passion. And there's an early form of Christianity, ascetic Christianity, where this was the task, was to identify your core sin and passion, that we all have one, a dominant one. And that, the Enneagram is a variation of that, is an evolution on that. And different authors have gone different places with this. There aren't that many authors in the Enneagram movement. There are probably a half a dozen serious Enneagram figures, from Gurdjieff forward. And he marked the first known surfacing of that symbol and the assignment of those numbers to the symbol. The symbol has origins going back to Pythagoras, and it was, again, these kind of 5 different schools that came together, and Gurdjieff brought them together himself, but he was a student of other traditions. He traveled and claimed to study with other mystery schools as well. So really, to understand the Enneagram, you need to get it, the ideas behind it, and to see how all of these things fit together. And it's surprisingly complex, or it can be. But the gist of it, for people that are learning for the first time, is that we all are human beings. We all have problems, okay? Even if you don't believe in morality or whatever, find me somebody who doesn't suffer. Find me somebody who doesn't have problems in his life or her life. Find me somebody that doesn't have a will to have pleasure and to enjoy life and to protect things that they love. And, find me someone who has no humanity whatsoever. And that's somebody who the Enneagram won't apply to. I really believe that everybody can get something from it. But it's about looking at yourself and identifying which of these sins or passions, these fixation points, is the biggest issue for you during your life. And different authors have different ways of trying to help us determine that. So I always recommend to go for different authors and get a balanced concept of these archetypes. And I also recommend that you do not, absolutely 100%, do not work with any professionals who would simply give you a type based on a conversation and to claim that they've got it and that that's your type. It's because it's about you finding your type. Okay, and different people of the same type, that's why types is not a good term. It's misleading. We can use fixation or passion. People of the same Enneagram passion can look completely different. Different colored skin, different way of talking, different walks of life, different culture, so many differences that unless you are extremely skilled to the point of supernatural, impossible ability, you will not be able to read somebody's type magically. And I've been in certain groups where they, claimed to be able to do that, and it's lies. It's false. It's a fiction. These people are liars. It's impossible. That's not what the Enneagram is. It's about identifying yourself. And these are the same types of people who will gaslight you about your type, who will spread, not a 4, not a 5, not an 8 memes, and who will try to control others via their typing to be in charge of other people's types. Okay? And you don't want to deal with those people. You can quickly see them for what they are once they try to control people's types. And, if somebody asks me about their type, I try to start an honest, open conversation about them with what makes sense to them and how to identify that. And I can tell you, for me personally, learning my type, it was not that fun of an experience. I came, to see the world in a darker way and started to see power, behind the scenes and how much power there is going on, because 8 is really a type that is obsessed with power, and they have a lust for power more than any of the types do. So, being able to finally embrace that in myself, it was a little bit like opening up Pandora's box. And, in my relationships were put to the test. Things started to come, it was a test in my life, a huge test. I realized, how much power I have in my action, and I realized I was using, too much power, too much intensity. This is what this is what we're like. It's when we were little kids, we developed that, and some people, they would argue and say, no, that's the sexual 6 or something. There's a lot of pitfalls people have that they will try to gaslight and to try to tip the tables, but there's subtle virtue signaling going on there. And it's very important you identify your own type and that you get it, and you don't, create a hierarchy of the types where one's better than the other. It's necessary to do it that way from within, that you type yourself, and that you don't accept hierarchical, impositions of your type from externally. That is, hear it from me. I am an 8, and I identify this for myself, and I understand justice. Okay, and I understand the abuse of power. And I have had people dictate types to me, and I've, been receptive to it and been open-minded to it. And thought, oh, well, maybe they're right, they say I'm a 5, surely I am right. And don't do that. Just don't do it. Don't work with somebody that's like that. That's a power grab, and, they have to have an open mind about the types. I think they should reflect back to you what they are hearing about the types and who you are, and they should use the language of the Enneagram. They shouldn't tell you who you are and what your type is. They should say, well, do you resonate with the type 8 fixation or the type 6 fixation? Is it fear? Is it the head triad? Is it this? Or, is it heart triad? Is it shame? To use the language that's been developed and to stick with that instead of projecting onto you, hey, this is your type. This is because we live in a very gaslighty culture these days where people are trying to control others' realities and truths, and we're lied to in the media, and we're lied to by each other, and you don't want that. At least with the Enneagram, you want to be in control of your own type, and that's really what it's about. It's about coming to identify for yourself. And if a professional helps you get there as a conversation, that's different. But there can be a subtle or not so subtle power dynamic, master-slave relationship going on there, where the professional steps in and says, no, this is your type, right? And they kind of repeatedly sort of hypnotize you. So don't let it happen. Refer to, the 7 deadly sins, the Kabbalah, the Sephirot. Refer to external reference points. Don't listen to somebody who wants to be a cult leader and a religious figure. Use the same equal equality for all, this system that applies to everybody. Okay, don't have anybody with authoritarian, concepts of the types and your type have some power over you. It's not the way to go. I think that it's a way to mistype yourself, have other people mistype you, not understand the types, and have your power taken away, and build up other people's egos, and hide the truth of your type from yourself. That you need to be the one to take the leap of faith here. You need to be the one to assign the type. That's traditionally how it was done, and in a modern society, that's what we do, so that we all have freedom, and we don't look at anyone and say, hey, that guy's God, because people are trying to play God when they do that. They're trying to be a cult leader and have power that they have no right to, and they assigned their own type, so they're stepping forward as a messiah. Now they have authority over others' types? No, I don't think so. That's not how it works. So it's a little bit like, I feel a little bit like Morpheus, telling you, what the Matrix is or something. It's things can change for you once you start to practice the Enneagram from within yourself more and not have it dictated from somebody else, where they're the one deciding for your type, where they're using collages or videos or whatever. It's not how it works. That's a lie.